You left the mic in here. Are you?
What?
I can tell you're not at. You're all over the place.
I don't know where my sunglasses are. Oh, they're on my. They were on my face.
They're on your fucking hat.
See?
Welcome to Downshift, everyone. My name is Paulo.
And my name is Matt, and we've spent the week with the new Toyota Land Cruiser. It's got us scratching our heads a little bit between Toyota's own lineup and the Lexus lineup. But today we're going to see just how it fits and address that after we cover the best and the rest. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about is kind of what I've been calling the 4Runner problem, and it's that this Land Cruiser is not that different from the new 4Runner, from the 6th gen. And I think that may have been a little bit of a miss. These things are very similar in size, they're going to be pretty similar in price. The 4Runner is just going to have a little bit more dedicated off-roady stuff. But I think Toyota could have taken this opportunity to make the 4Runner more of a Wrangler and Bronco competitor, something a little bit more boxy, a little bit more, you know, with the roof coming off and the doors coming off and that sort of thing, and still play into the heritage of the Land Cruiser. Now, that said, there are some differences between the Land Cruiser and the 4Runner as they are. The Land Cruiser here gets the iForce Max engine exclusively, whereas the 4Runner, you can have the option of the non-turbo like you would get in the Tacoma. And the 4Runner is a little bit more off-road serious. This is a little bit more on-road ready, a little bit more refined with a full-time four-wheel drive. So there are some differences. I think they're just between this, the 4Runner, and the GX. They're three very, very similar vehicles occupying about the same size and price, and it's just a little bit confusing. The other problem is that it's just a little bit too expensive. Now, this is kind of a traditional Land Cruiser thing. They're always kind of expensive, but this is a new breed in itself. And I think, as we mentioned at the beginning of the video, it just kind of steps on toes a little bit, or maybe infringes a little bit too close to other things within Toyota Lexus's own umbrella. This, the 1958 generation, or I should say trim, starts at about $56,000. Now, as tested, this is 60 grand. But the normal or middle tier Land Cruiser, it's called the Land Cruiser, that's the trim, starts at what, $62,000. Which is very, very close to the very, very good Lexus GX. And that is a full Lexus experience with a Lexus interior and a V6 for only $3,000 more. And then when you go up to a first edition Land Cruiser, that's like $75,000. And you can get a lot of Lexus GX for $75,000. And that, I think, is the biggest problem with this Land Cruiser. But let's talk about all the good things. Dude, somebody in the comments, you know how I talk about this as my nub?
Yes.
In the hat? Somebody in the comments thought I meant my whole head is a nub. But then one of the best things is under the hood. Now, this is the only engine you're gonna get. 2.4 liter, turbocharged, 2 electric motors, orange cables, means hybrid, 326 horsepower. Yes, almost 350 in the GX. So very, very close, again, to the GX. That kind of suggests that that V6 and that GX is a little, let's say, not strained. But anyway, there's a crap load of torque in here, about 456, right? Pound-feet of torque?
465.
400, I'm a little dyslexic. I think it's rubbing off from you. But anyway, there's plenty and plenty and plenty of torque in here, and the fuel economy is actually pretty good for something of this size. 23 mpg combined, 0 to 60 in?
6.6.
6.6. There's a lot to love under the hood of the new Land Cruiser. And then we're going to talk about the daily ability. We talked about this a little bit earlier on how the Land Cruiser may be a little bit more daily oriented, a little bit more usable that way on the street, and the 4Runner might be a little bit more disciplined off-road. But here, it's great to drive around day to day. You've got an 8-speed automatic. The transition between gas and hybrid is really seamless. You do have a full-time 4-wheel drive option like you would have in the Lexus GX. That's really nice here in Wisconsin for wintertime. You don't have to worry about selecting into 4-wheel drive. The steering is pretty light, but not too light. It's got a little bit of feedback, but it's easy to drive. And this does feel, from a ride perspective, still a little bit like a truck. It still feels solid rear axle, but you do have independent front suspension, so you get a little bit of feel. It just drives nice. It's really smooth. It's pretty quiet. You get a bit of low-end torque. It's really pretty pleasant to drive around town. I also really do like the styling of this over something like the new 4Runner. I do think this is one of the better looking SUVs in Toyota's lineup. I want to get to your thoughts at the end. But we do have it in a pretty subtle spec. It's the gray, it's the 1958 trim, so it's pretty simple in origin, but you do have the kind of heritage lights and the heritage grille like you would see in my old 5th gen 4Runner. But it's very black. You've got LED fog lights up here. You can option spend a couple $100 bucks, get some skid plates under there for some protection, but the shape from the profile and the front 3/4 is incredibly Lexus GX. It's very boxy, it's very geometric, it's very dimensional. It has that old school kind of SUV look. FJ style wing mirrors. Not the two-tone roof, you're gonna have to go up to the first edition for that, but it does look very good. From the profile, it does look incredibly Lexus GX. I do like the roof basket that you have up here, wheels kind of okay, and a pretty simple all-season rather. Back end, again, very simple, big diaper hanging off the rear bumper here. Not my favorite, but you do have some blacked out badging here for Land Cruiser, Toyota, and then of course this being the iForce Max. I don't really know why they put this badge on here because they all have this engine, but it's pretty handsome. And we are going to talk about off-roading for a little bit now. Unfortunately, timing and scheduling didn't work out for us to be able to take this thing to Road America and use their off-road course this week. But I have done that with my old 5th gen 4Runner, and a lot of the systems that you get in here are evolutions of the systems that we had in that thing. So you've got things, or you can option things in your Land Cruiser like KDSS or Toyota's Kinetic Dynamic Suspension System. We've talked about that in our 4Runner ownership video. You've also got downhill assist control, you've got crawl control, which is like an off-road cruise control, you've got multi-terrain select, or you can get a sway bar disconnector, you do have that full-time 4-wheel drive, the center differential lock, and a rear differential lock. You can get a high and a low range. You can get skid plates on here, although in this 1958 they are a little bit extra, and it just kind of goes in tandem. It lives up to that kind of hype of if you want to go somewhere and get back, you need a Land Cruiser, as it's been demonstrated by maybe other people on the internet. And not maybe specifically in the 1958 base trim, but you can get a lot of tech features, as you probably would expect from all the modern Toyotas, really. Don't think you get a head-up display, but you do have a fully digital instrument cluster. It changes a little bit with your drive modes and that sort of thing. But then here, your main event, this is the smaller screen, but you can get up to a 14-inch screen, wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, dual Bluetooth connection, over-the-air updates, all that stuff. And you can even get like trail maps, you can get some off-road cameras and different views. Again, this one's not gonna have it, but you do have pretty mediocre reverse camera. There's just a lot of like pitch and roll, off-road status, trail maps and cameras and all sorts of stuff that you can get if you want to spend a little bit more money. So you can also get a wireless charger, something you're not going to get in the 1958, but overall it's hard to ding the tech because you can get pretty much anything. And when it comes to towing, if you remove the saggy diaper here, you could get a tow receiver. And this thing will tow up to 6,000 pounds, which is a big amount. It's 1,000 pounds more, half a ton more than I could tow in my 5th gen 4Runner with the big 4-liter V6 naturally aspirated. So don't be afraid of turbos and hybrids because they can still tow up to 6,000 pounds, at least in the Land Cruiser. And we'll talk about the rear seats, but first we're going to talk about the door. Now, like some of the crossovers we've tested recently, the doors don't actually open about 90 degrees, and the entrance is a little bit narrower than maybe you'd expect. So if you do have a child seat or a kid, maybe attaching a child seat to the ISOFIX points is a little bit more difficult, or loading stuff into the back seat might be a little bit more difficult, but it is just something worth noting. If you're a normal human being, an adult, you got plenty of space back here. I'm 6'1", I've got plenty of knee room, got plenty of headroom for me and my nub. I do have a climate zone back here, and your climate vents are actually up in the ceiling. But you do have stuff like chargers and map pockets back here, and a cup holder. So the only thing you're going to miss is a panoramic roof in here. You are not going to get window shades back here, and you're not going to get heated rear seats like in the GX. When we get to the trunk, your cargo practicality is actually pretty good. Now, in your base, you don't get a powered trunk, but you can in some of the higher trims. When you get in here, it's 38 cubic feet of space, which actually, as you can see, is pretty practical. It's a nice rectangular or square opening, so it's easy to put stuff in. The load floor is a bit high, and you're going to have to load things over this kind of fat rear bumper back here. But obviously this, not this specifically, but back here is where your battery is, which again, you get a little bit of space back here, and you have a little bit of space up here. I don't know if you can see that, but you got a little bit of space up there. Now, one of the nice things with this being the hybrid and the 2.4 iForce Max is you have a 2400 watt or 2.4 kilowatt outlet back here. So you can power a lot of stuff from this humble looking outlet. But you look at the space overall and you can tell this has been a 3-row vehicle that they've removed the 3rd row from. You still have air vents up here, you still have cup holders back here, and you even have USB-C chargers in your 3rd row. So it's pretty practical. If you do want to use this as like a camping hangout area, you've still got chargers and you've still got cup holders, you've got a lot of space to hang out. And I do want to touch on the cabin experience because it is actually pretty pleasant. And even here in the base trim in the 1958, there's something kind of nice about it. You do have the cloth seats, but they're really nice. They don't get too hot in the summer. They're not going to get too cold in the winter. If they do get cold, you do have heated seats up here, and you even have a heated steering wheel. Of course, if you spend more money, you can get cooled seats, you can get power tilt and telescope on your steering wheel. But even here with the manual controls and the fabric seats and some of the more durable materials, there's just something kind of charming about this interior, and I don't hate it. What do you think?
I like it too. It's really nostalgic. It kind of brings me back to like my Jeep Cherokee that I used to have, but with newer tech. And I personally really like that.
And then just a couple odds and ends on the Land Cruiser before we get behind the wheel with Paulo. Like, one thing that's kind of weird, you do have your heated seat button over here and a blank switch next to it, which would be for a cooled seat on upper trims, but your heated steering wheel is all the way over on the passenger side of the car. And you see your map lights here, they don't have any buttons next to it, but they are touch sensitive like you would see in the Lexus GX. Maybe a little bit of part sharing here, but a surprisingly luxurious touch in a Land Cruiser. And your center screen here, of course, this is the hybrid. This is the iForce Max. And we don't have an energy flow screen, which we normally have on all of the Toyota hybrid vehicles. You're just gonna curb a wheel. What is this test gonna tell you? What is this test gonna tell you, honestly?
Okay, I like that. I like that. It can do that.
It can go over a curb, so it can be a Jeep. I don't like it.
It's got like 460 pound-feet of torque, right?
It's got plenty of torque, it just doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
But as a Land Cruiser, it's not supposed to sound good.
Yeah, what were your standouts?
I don't know if I had any, like, necessarily one thing. I like the styling, the interior, like, somehow feels like kind of natural and like relaxing to me. The cargo space is pretty good. Like, there's just some like charm, like some inexplicable charm about this car.
Yeah, I think I'm the same way. I think
just like it.
The biggest standout for me was it rides really smooth, and I had a similar experience in the GX. But I think, to your point, like in this trim with like the cloth seats and stuff, it's kind of nostalgic, and there is just something about that I really like, because you have all the tech features that you'll need, but it's really rugged in here. Yeah. And I feel like you step in it, you just know this is going to last 300,000 miles. Yeah, I guess the only other thing that I'll say is, like, I was impressed with this new drivetrain, the 2.4 turbo hybrid, the iForce Max. In this application, it's new, and it was really smooth. It was really refined. The transition is good. It feels nice and torquey coming away from like a stoplight or something. I had no problem with it. Yeah, I was impressed. So I think it did a great job. Now let's get to it.
Let's get to the big question, the question that we posed at the beginning of the video. This exists in a weird place at a weird time with weird cousins. Yep. Because this is about the same size as a 4Runner. 4Runner is a little bit cheaper. It's going to be a little bit more dedicated off-roader-y. This is all-time all-wheel drive versus 4Runner's part-time four-wheel drive. The bigger problem I have is the GX. Because the GX is, relatively speaking, you know, $60,000 to $65,000 is a lot of money objectively. But between those two numbers, $5,000 difference to go from this experience that we're in right here, with the cloth seats, with no like wireless charger or anything, to go from this to a Lexus interior. And that GX was freaking good. And that's $5,000 difference.
I know. I feel like the only thing that this has that doesn't is you have the iForce hybrid here versus there it's the 6-cylinder. So you're gonna get better fuel economy in this.
You will get better fuel economy here.
But I feel like, to your point though, the GX makes a lot of sense.
It's just so closely priced.
Yeah.
And when you go up to like not the 1958 trim, and you go up to the first edition is $75,000. That is big money. Yeah. Do you know how much GX you could get for $75,000?
I know.
So it's not that anything's wrong with this. It's just that the GX is so good and so closely priced that for me it's an easy choice to go that direction. But if you like the heritage and the nameplate of Land Cruiser, and this is objectively a good thing.
It is, yeah.
It's just a little bit too much money.
Yeah, no, I agree. I completely agree with you. And then even just like comparing it to the 6th Gen 4Runner a little bit more, basically have the same engine, the same transmission, but you have better armor in that. You have better wheel and tire options with that.
You can also get the non-hybrid, right? You can get just the 2.4 turbo.
Yep.
So it's like a Tacoma.
You also have better approach, departure angles, better ground clearance in the 4Runner.
Yeah.
So
it's better off-roader.
Exactly.
It is a better off-roader.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. But that's also kind of interesting. Like the Land Cruiser is the more dailyable. Like I guess it has been for the last generation, the 200 series or whatever it was. Like I don't know. It's just weird.
But then you have a locking center and a locking rear diff in here.
Yeah.
The 4Runner won't have.
I think the thing that kind of bites me a little bit is like philosophically, I don't know which one should have got changed because there's so much heritage in the Land Cruiser name. But like this would have been an easy opportunity for Toyota to be like, let's go all in with a Bronco Wrangler fighter. Let's make something with the roof that comes off. Let's make something with doors that come off. Like you have a 4Runner and a Land Cruiser occupying basically the same space.
Right.
The biggest difference is price and a couple off-road things. Like that would be an opportunity to make the 4Runner, let's say, a true like Bronco Wrangler thing. Square body, you know, make it a hybrid. I don't know, do whatever, but like that would have been what I would do.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I wish they would have done.
No, I agree. It is kind of a pity, and I do feel bad for this thing because, like, to your point, it is a really good car, and there's a lot of heritage here, but it just is in an awkward space fighting almost with its siblings.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just weird. But leave it down in the comments. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess what would you get if you're shopping this?
Yeah.
I mean, are you considering a 6th gen? Are you considering the GX? Or are you really sold on this? And if you are, like, tell us why, because I think it'd be good to know.
Yeah, sound off down in the comments. But thank you to Toyota for letting us have a go. It's a great car. It's a great Land Cruiser. So thank you to them. Thank you to you for watching, and we'll see you next time.